Hello and welcome back to the Service Impact Podcast, and I'm being joined today by Stacey Abler. She's our Director of Digital over at Outside Communications. And how are you today, Stacey?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing awesome. Now, we are going to spare our listeners of the Oregon Ducks and Georgia Bulldogs football preview, although I think we could do that, and I mean I'm really tempted.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know who would win the fight, so
Hey, who knows? I have a feeling. I mean, I know that we've only played once since Dan Lanning came over from Georgia, and we aren't going to talk about that, but there's a good chance that one of these days in these playoffs, the way we have them now, that we could have Oregon and Georgia going at it, which would be amazing. It'd be super fun.
Yeah, hopefully I would still be working for you after. So, we'll see.
Are you thinking that you'd be that upset with the loss that you would leave?
No, I'm thinking that you would be that upset.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. You guys get a quarterback and we'll talk about it. Okay. So, we're going to get into Google Ads and budgeting and bidding. And we know certainly for service businesses that, every dollar matters. And, for a lot of service businesses, their ad channel is their number one lead channel. And so this stuff is kind of important. But yeah, how does a company that, let's say, is a $5 million company, they're not, they're small, but they're not horribly small, and they're trying to tap into a channel that maybe hasn't been something that they go to, regularly. I mean, where do you start?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, it's good to understand that it is a bit of trial and error because you haven't been on Google Ads before. So we don't have a great idea as far as like competition levels, who you're going to be going up against. When you use like the Google Keyword Ads Planner to go in and, look at that, then you're seeing ranges for keyword bids of $5 to $70, and you're going to end up somewhere in between. Obviously, if you have to pay $70 a click versus paying $5 a click, then that budget is going to look very different. So there is a bit of, let's get like a starter budget to start and just get some feelers out there and see how things go. But if we have decent data, then what we can do is start to put all of these different data points together. So even if you have like conversion rates for your website from different traffic sources, so say how many people convert when they come from organic search, then we can throw that into the equation for paid, and to be able to look and see exactly how those two could line up together and what that would look like. So if you have a 10% conversion rate from organic search, then what does that look like if you also have a 10% conversion rate from paid? And then basically what we're able to do is just kind of walk backwards on the numbers. So if you need 10 conversions a month and you have a 10% conversion rate, then that's 10 times 10. So you need 100 people to come to the website in order to get those 10 conversions. And then it's just a matter of how much you would have to pay per click. So if it's $10 a click and you need 100 people, then that's going to be $1,000 a month budget. So that's just kind of how we'd work backwards on that math. And it's going to be very based on the conversion rate for your website, and then also the amount that you would have to pay per click, as well as how much business do you actually want and how much can you handle.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Stacy. I mean, it's one thing, okay, where do I start? But it's like there are so many other factors in terms of capacity for businesses that it's like sometimes businesses actually bite off more than they can chew, which can actually affect other aspects of their business. In other words, if they're not able to perform the way that they have been up until this point because they're so busy and people are in a hurry and maybe not getting the work done correctly. Now all of a sudden it's affecting your reviews, which is affecting your local search channel. I mean, there's all sorts of things that people need to consider as they're heading down that road. But I would say the effort to open up the channel is only going to make companies better by having to address a lot of these questions.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, the more that you understand that, right, the better that your business is overall. So you need to have those ideas about capacity and what it is that you're able to service. Because like you said, it will impact your reviews. And then if someone is searching for that particular service in your area and you're popping up, say, like Mac reviews, and you see that this person has a 4.8 and then this company is sitting down at a 3.2, well, I mean, all other things equal, that I'm going with the 4.8, right? And then that can also have an impact just on what you're paying. Because Google can see that, you know, this business is more relevant than what yours is because of the service ratings that they have that are associated with it. So there's hundreds and hundreds of factors that go into what you will pay for that click. But having the stellar reputation and having the excellent reviews, because you are able to take care of the business that's coming to your site or to your business, that's paramount.
All right. So, you know, I get phone calls, and I know you get phone calls all the time with somebody from Google telling me that they can help me with our ad programs. Should we be taking these people up on these solicitations of advice?
So my immediate answer is no. The random person that calls you from Google, and a lot of times it's also important to recognize that some will say that they're from Google and they're actually not. They can be a third-party contractor, and it's not a true Google employee who is also calling and representing themselves that way. But for the most part, the recommendations that they give you are in Google's best interest, not necessarily yours. So they will go in and do a lot of, you know, turn on all of these automations. You know, you need to open up everything. Don't set a budget. Just let it spend as much as it wants to, as long as you're getting conversions. I've had lots of bad advice that's happened through those phone calls. On the other hand, I've also had a dedicated team at Google where they're my employees, so to speak, and I work with them for years at a time, and they really know my business and everything about it. That's a whole different ballgame. But the random people who you get the phone call or the email from, and they're like, hey, your ad account could look better, those should be ignored.
Well, unless, and I think that a lot of companies, I mean, they've either, like a lot of companies out there, and I'm not even talking small companies, they're new to it, and because somebody is a marketing person, they kind of take over. They may or may not understand everything that's going on. You know, they may take that advice because they don't know and they don't understand, and they're like, oh, okay, well, you know more than I do. But it can really affect a company, and ultimately you see a lot of companies turning the channel off because they don't feel like it works for them.
Right. Yes. So, you know, if you go in and say set up all of these different automations and you have search partners turned on, for instance, then those things can have a huge impact on how your campaign works. And if you don't realize all the things that are happening behind the scenes because of those automations, then it's also very hard to go in and try to correct what's happening to optimize the campaigns. So when I take over a campaign or an account, that's one of the first things that I do is go in and turn off all automations that are set, because I want to be able to make those decisions based on the data that I'm seeing, not have things that are happening behind the scenes that may or may not be privy to exactly what is going on with the campaigns.
Stacey Abler is joining me. She's the director of digital marketing at Outside Communications, and we're talking about Google Ads budgeting and making the most of our our channel and our money and our opportunities. And at the end of the day, the folks that I talk to at our customers, I talk with a lot of the C-suite folks, and they're like, how do we reduce cost per lead? I mean, ROI, CPL, those are the things. And maybe you could get into cost per lead and gosh, why that is so important to get that down. And it may seem obvious for some, but some people are like, yeah, okay, I've got my $2,500 budget, and we're spending $60 a lead. I mean, do the math. I mean, if we can get that thing to 35, I mean, that means something, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, the lower the cost per lead, then obviously the better it is from a budget standpoint, as long as you're still getting quality leads at that lower cost per lead. And of course, every business is going to have a different cost per lead that works for their business, right? If I'm selling something that's $100, then I can't pay $90 to acquire the customer. If I'm selling something that's $10,000, then, my cost per lead can be a good bit higher and I'm still remaining profitable with that. So the cost per lead is not like a set metric that goes across everyone across the board. It's very individual to that company, to their revenue and expenses and net profits, and all of that goes into that equation to figure out what that profitable cost per lead is. The other thing that businesses would need to look at is we're sending you the leads, so whether that's a form fill or a phone call or whatever that happens to be, to get to you so that you are able to contact that customer. Not all of those are going to convert either for you. So it's not going to be 100% from Google Ads to actual business. So we also take into account that, right? So if you're able to convert, say, 50% of the people who contact you, then we need to account for that in your cost per lead when we're doing all of that calculation. But it's very important to be able to try to optimize that cost per lead. One of the big things is to go in and look even at like your ads, how they're doing. You want to look at the conversion rate once they get to your website. And one of the things that a lot of companies ignore, and a lot of even Google Ads specialists ignore, is the website experience. So they go in and make all the optimizations within Google Ads, and then they ignore what's happening on the actual website. Well, the website is where you're actually getting the conversion, right? It's where the person is going to fill out the form, or they're going to give you a call, or whatever your conversion point is. And so we need to have that optimized as well. And there have been cases where we've gone in and we've made edits to that landing page to clean it up, to make it more clear, make sure that your call to action is closer to the top of the page where it's showing above the fold, especially on mobile. And you can make a dramatic difference in your cost per lead and your conversion rates by not touching anything in Google Ads and focusing on what that landing page experience is. And then when we go back into Google Ads, then we're looking at things like your keywords, what your cost per click is. You may have some keywords that are super competitive that have a very high cost per click, and you decide that that's just not worth it to me to pay $90 for that click. Like, I'd rather focus on the keywords that are less than 30. And so it's going in and combing through that. Google's also, with the match types, they've gotten looser and looser over time. So even something that used to be that it was exact match. So if I had an exact match keyword of red shoes, the only thing I would show for was red shoes. But now, even with an exact match of red shoes, then I could show for red heels, red sneakers, sneakers with red laces, like different things like that, because Google's just kind of expanding what that is. So you need to also be going through your search terms, so what people are actually searching for that triggers your ads, and making sure that all of those are relevant for your business. That's another way to be able to get rid of waste within the ads. But overall, you're looking at what's my click-through rate, what's my cost per click, and those are all going to be driven by your cost per click is obviously get driven by your keyword. Your click-through rate is typically driven by a combination of the keyword and the ad copy. So you want to make sure that your ad copy is optimized. And then you have your conversion rate, which is what's happening once they're on your site. So those are kind of the most important metrics that you would be looking at for a place to be able to optimize and get an idea of what it is that can be changed, and what you need to work on first in order to drop that cost per lead. Like we said, everything's going to be driven by capacity, and it could be that, you can only handle 10 leads a month. Or it could be that you say, hey, if I can get leads for $25, I'll take all the leads you can give me. Like, I don't even want to have a budget. Just continue to give me leads for $25. So they're all like very different strategies for how you would manage something like that. And also, just kind of looking at your cost per lead overall.
Yeah, and you touched on something in terms of like, okay, now it's to the website, and of course we help with those landing pages, but we make sure that those landing pages are right. But even a step further, once that lead goes into, whether it's a CRM system or it's an email that's sent to a group, we work with some amazing sales organizations, like just service businesses that are just awesome at sales. And maybe you could speak a little bit to not so much the sales methodology and stuff, but like what differentiates a business, an organization that is really good taking the baton. In other words, here's the lead, and running with it and closing it. And are there some things that you could identify that kind of differentiates the company that's really making the most of it versus the company that's probably letting some of these opportunities slip through the cracks?
Yeah. So, I think one of the biggest things is just response and the response time, right? So you're responding to all of the leads that you're getting, and you're doing it quickly. You see reviews all the time where it's like, I reached out and they took 3 days to respond back to me. And we all know that due to the Amazon effect, that no one has patience for anything anymore. Everyone thinks that everything should happen instantaneously. So when they reach out to you to try to give you money, to give you business, then you need to, as quickly as possible, respond back to them, so that you can start nurturing that interaction with them. So I would say, even if it's a point of not necessarily being able to personally reach out because maybe of the volume of inquiries that you get, then to have different methods set up where it's more of an automated process, so they're at least hearing something back from you. So they get put into like an email marketing campaign, and they get email 1, 2, 3, and something to where it's like, hey, we got your inquiry, like we're working on it, whatever it happens to be, but so they know that they're not being ignored. So I think that is super important, to be able to stay on top of the responses and the response time. I think that's one of probably the biggest complaints that we see from someone who's tried to convert on a website, and then they're just left waiting for someone to reach out and to do something with the inquiry.
Yeah, and one of the things I'll point out that I encourage of our customers, and that is, it doesn't matter to me if you end up closing the business or not. That customer, you just found a customer, okay? And whether or not they end up giving you money or not, they're a potential customer down the road. And a CRM system of some sort is super important for opportunities that you may have in the future, nurturing, staying in touch. If you've got an inside sales team, it may be a call that you make periodically just to get out in front of potential business that could be coming down the pike. I know that, our industrial type customers, there's business that's happening on a regular basis. And you may not have gotten this one, but you know what? There may be another project coming up that if you just show an interest and, in who they are as a business, that, my gosh, it may never get to them having to search on Google for somebody, because they've got somebody there that's there to service them, to be available for them with questions. So there's value beyond just the sale. And I think that's probably, just from my perspective, which is, I deal with our accounts differently than you do. I feel like there's so much meat on the bones with so many businesses of just not building that empire. Like, you've already paid for these leads, you've already paid for these names, and it's like there's so much meat on the bones if you just continue. In other words, if our ad programs also turn into eventually nurturing programs, and there's a strategy around that, whether it's from your internal guys or whether it's email, which may or may not be helpful. You just have to see. But there's just the rich can get richer, when you're doing this.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think that should be everybody's perspective, right? It's always easier to convert a warm lead versus a cold lead, to go after people who are already in your database versus let's go get all these brand new customers who'd never heard of us before. So I think it is important to be able to, even if you can't close it then, most CRM systems will also allow you to make notes, to tag them in certain ways. So, if you're an HVAC company and you have somebody who is calling and saying like, hey, do you have any AC specials going on right now? And you don't at that time, but a month from now you implement that special, then that's something that you could reach back out to that customer about. And it feels very personalized because you're following up specifically on something that they asked about. And you're saving them the trouble, like you said, of having to go through the search and now I've got to call these companies and figure out what's going on. So I think it's very important to make sure that anyone who reaches out to you is staying within your CRM system, however it is that you track your leads, and you're continually following up with them, even if it's just, a touch point every quarter, every month, whatever it happens to be, but something where your name is getting in front of them. You can also do advertising with that. As long as you're not in a HIPAA protected space, then you can feed that information back into Meta or LinkedIn or Google, and be able to target those people that way, just so that you're staying top of mind with them. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the leads, even the ones that don't close, where you're truly getting the sale. But yes, they absolutely all have value.
All right. Final subject I want to get into here, and I know you are huge on this, and that is testing. I mean, come on. I mean, do we always get it right the first time? And how would we know if we don't?
No. So I think it's dangerous for the people who think that they know everything and can go in and set up the perfect campaign right off the bat. Every single account is different. There's going to be nuances between them. Something that works in account A is not going to work in account B. And so I refer to myself as a test and learn marketer. So everything I do is testing. I can go to a website and say, I really think that this other landing page is going to convert better than the one we're currently using. But instead of just flipping to the new landing page, I'm going to put them side by side and test and see what truly happens. There's always surprises. There's always things that you think are going to go one way and they go another way. So I think it's very important to test, whether it's landing pages, ad copy, your keywords, and, the expansion that you're doing with those, your location targeting. So, do you go super granular where you're 3 miles around your location, or can you start going out further than that? There's a lot of different things that you could test, even ad schedule. If your business closes at 5:00, then do you turn your ads off at 5:00 and pick them back up when you're open again, so that you don't have someone who's calling and getting the answering service. They're always getting a human. So there's lots of different things that you can test, and I absolutely believe in testing and following the data. So have to take my opinion out of it, what I think is going to work, will work, looks better, whatever, and I go by whatever the data is telling me. And that is what we optimize to. And like I said, I think it's very dangerous for the people who manage ad accounts who don't do it that way and who just go in and make wholesale changes without having the data to back it up, that truly is the best path for that particular account.
Well, Stacy, I appreciate you coming in, and you can find her at Outside Communications. And she does a great job for our customers. yeah, taking care of everything that we just got done talking about. And if you're interested in hearing more from our podcast, you can head over to serviceimpact.com for more information. And we'll see you next time here on the Service Impact Podcast.